This is an adapted version of The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry, specifically crafted for English learners at the A2 level. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was in small pennies. Della saved these pennies, one or two at a time. She argued with the grocer, the vegetable man, and the butcher to save every cent. She felt embarrassed because she looked poor, but she had to do it. 3 times Della counted the money, $1.87. And the next day was Christmas. There was nothing to do but lie down on the old cheap sofa and cry. So Della did it. It shows us that life is made of crying, sighing, and smiling, but mostly sighing. While Della is crying, let's look at her home. It was a small apartment for $8 a week. It was very poor and very plain. In the hallway below, there was a letterbox, but no letter could fit inside it. There was also a doorbell, but it did not work. Next to the door was a card with the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. The name Dillingham was added when Mr. James was earning $30 a week. Now he only earned $20, and the name looked too long and expensive for them. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home, he was called Jim and received a big hug from Mrs. James Dillingham Young, who we already know as Della. This was very good. Della stopped crying and put some powder on her cheeks. She stood by the window and looked out sadly at a gray cat walking on a gray fence in a gray backyard. Tomorrow was Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 to buy Jim a present. She had been saving for months, but she only had this small amount. $20 a week is not much. Everything was more expensive than she expected. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. She had spent many happy hours planning something nice for him, something fine, rare, and special, something worthy of her Jim. There was a tall, thin mirror between the windows of the room. Perhaps you have seen a mirror in an $8 apartment. If a person is very thin and moves quickly, they can see their reflection in small parts. Della was thin, so she knew how to use it. Suddenly, she turned away from the window and stood before the mirror. Her eyes were shining brightly, but her face became pale. Quickly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, the James Dillingham Youngs had 2 treasures that they were very proud of. One was Jim's gold watch. It belonged to his father and his grandfather before him. The other was Della's hair. If the Queen of Sheba lived in the apartment across the street, Della would let her hair hang out the window just to make the Queen's jewels look cheap. If King Solomon was the janitor with all his treasures in the basement, Jim would pull out his watch every time he passed just to make the king feel jealous. So now Della's beautiful hair fell around her, shining like a brown waterfall. It reached below her knees and covered her like a dress. Then she put it up again nervously and quickly. For a minute she stopped and stood still while a tear or two fell on the old red carpet. She put on her old brown jacket and her old brown hat. With a sparkle in her eyes, she ran out of the door and down the stairs to the street. She stopped at a shop with a sign, Madame Sofronie, hair goods of all kinds. Della ran up the stairs. Madame was a large, cold woman. She did not look like a Sofronie. "Will you buy my hair?" asked Della. "I buy hair," said Madame. "Take your hat off and let me see it." The brown waterfall fell down. $20, said Madame, lifting Della's hair with her hand. "Give it to me quickly," said Della. The next 2 hours were like a beautiful dream. Della ran through the stores looking for Jim's present. She found it at last. It was made for Jim and no one else. There was nothing like it in any other store. It was a platinum watch chain. It was simple and very elegant. Its value was in the expensive metal, not in cheap decorations. It was perfect for Jim's watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew it was the right gift. The chain was like Jim, quiet and very valuable. The store took $21 from her. Della hurried home with the remaining 87 cents. With this new chain, Jim could look at his watch proudly in front of anyone. The watch was beautiful, but Jim usually looked at it secretly because he used an old leather strap instead of a chain. When Della reached home, she became more serious and careful. She used her curling irons and lit the gas to fix her hair. It was a very big job. After 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close curls. She looked like a schoolboy. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. If Jim doesn't kill me, she thought, he will say I look like a girl from a cheap show. But what could I do with only $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was ready. The pan was hot on the stove to cook the meat for dinner. Jim was never late. Della held the watch chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door. Then she heard his steps on the stairs. Her face turned white for a moment. She whispered a little prayer. "Please, God, make him think I am still pretty." The door opened. Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor Jim. He was only 22 and he had many responsibilities. He needed a new coat and he had no gloves. Jim stopped inside the door. He stood as still as a hunting dog. His eyes were fixed on Della. She could not understand the expression on his face, and it terrified her. It was not anger or surprise or horror. He just stared at her with a strange look. Della jumped off the table and ran to him. "Jim, darling," she cried, "don't look at me that way. I cut my hair and sold it because I wanted to give you a Christmas present. It will grow again. You won't mind, will you? I had to do it. My hair grows very fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful gift I have for you." "You have cut off your hair?" asked Jim slowly, as if he could not believe it. "I cut it off and sold it," said Della. "Don't you like me anyway? I am still the same person without my hair, right?" Jim looked around the room curiously. "You say your hair is gone?" he asked, looking confused. "Don't look for it," said Della. "It's sold and gone. It's Christmas Eve, Jim. Be kind to me, because I did it for you. Maybe someone could count the hairs on my head," she said sweetly, "but nobody can count my love for you. Shall I cook dinner now, Jim?" Jim seemed to wake up from his dream. He hugged his Della. "For a few seconds, let's look the other way. Does it matter if you have $8 a week or $1 million a year? A mathematician would give you the wrong answer. The Magi, the wise men, brought expensive gifts, but they were not as important as this. You will understand this later." Jim took a package from his coat pocket and threw it on the table. "Don't make a mistake about me, Dell," he said. "No haircut or shampoo can make me love you less. But if you open that package, you will see why I was so shocked at first." Della's white fingers quickly tore the string and paper. Then she gave a happy scream of joy. But a second later, she started to cry. Jim had to comfort her immediately. Inside the package were the combs. It was the set of combs for the side and the back of her hair that Della had looked at for a long time in a shop window on Broadway. They were beautiful combs, made of real tortoiseshell with jewels on the edges. They were the perfect color for her beautiful lost hair. They were expensive, and she never had any hope of owning them. Now they were hers, but the long hair for these beautiful combs was gone. But she held them to her heart. Finally, she looked up with wet eyes and a smile and said, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." Then Della jumped up like a little cat and cried, "Oh, oh!" Jim had not seen his beautiful present yet. She held the gold chain out to him on her hand. The metal seemed to shine with her bright spirit. "Isn't it a dandy, Jim? I looked all over town to find it. You will have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how the chain looks on it." Instead of giving her the watch, Jim sat down on the sofa. He put his hands behind his head and smiled. "Dell," he said, "let's put our Christmas presents away and keep them for a while. They are too nice to use right now. I sold my watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now let's cook dinner." The Magi, as you know, were wise men, very wise men, who brought gifts to the baby in the manger. They started the tradition of giving Christmas presents. Because they were wise, their gifts were also wise. I have told you the story of two foolish children in a small apartment. They sacrificed their greatest treasures for each other. But listen, of all the people who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Everywhere, people like Jim and Della are the wisest. They are the true Magi.